There is a plant sitting in a forgotten corner of the Andes that produces 15 pounds of food from a single root. It needs no fertilizer, no pesticides, no special watering system, and almost zero attention from the moment you plant it to the moment you harvest it. It tastes like apple mixed with honey, sweet, crunchy, and refreshing. Scientists in Peru and Japan have published serious peer-reviewed research confirming its extraordinary effect on blood sugar, gut bacteria, and metabolic health. Indigenous civilizations in South America ate it for thousands of years and never suffered the metabolic diseases now bankrupting modern healthcare systems. A single plant produces between 5 and 10 kilos of edible roots per season and then multiplies itself. One planting can feed a family for months, and the global food industry has spent the last century making absolutely certain you would never learn its name. They did not ignore this plant because it failed. They ignored it because it worked far too well. A root that grows itself, feeds a family, and replaces expensive sugar alternatives cannot be packaged, patented, or sold on a monthly subscription. And anything that cannot generate recurring revenue has to be quietly erased. This is the full story of yacón, the Andean survival root that ancient peoples ate for millennia, that modern science has now confirmed as extraordinary, and that a $500 billion global food industry needs you to never find, grow, or share. Welcome to Lost Skills. This is where we open the vaults they spent decades locking shut. If this knowledge matters to you, subscribe now and ring the bell. Its scientific name is Smolanthus sonchifolius. It belongs to the Asteraceae family, the same family as sunflowers and artichokes. It comes from the Andean highlands, from elevations between 1,000 and 3,000 meters, where nights are cool, days are sunny, and the soil is ancient and mineral-rich. For thousands of years, Andean peoples in what is now Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, and Colombia cultivated this root without any of the inputs modern agriculture has convinced us are necessary. No synthetic fertilizer, no chemical pesticide, no drip irrigation system. Just a root placed in ordinary soil, left alone, and harvested at the end of the season with an abundance that shocks people the first time they experience it. The Spanish documented yacón in their colonial records, but did not bring it back to Europe. The reason was simple. The roots bruise during transport. They do not have the tough skin of a potato that survives being thrown into crates and shipped across continents. So it stayed in the Andes, eaten by millions of people who understood its value, while the rest of the world received potatoes, sugarcane, and corn instead. 3 crops that could survive long commercial transport. 3 crops that could be processed, packaged, and controlled. And 3 crops that would eventually contribute to the exact metabolic crisis the modern world now faces. Stay with me, because what modern science reveals about this plant is even more extraordinary than the history. But first, everything you have seen so far is barely scratching the surface. I collected every technique, every proven study, and every method that the food industry hid from you. All of it inside the complete Lost Skills vault. Ancient survival foods that cost almost nothing to grow. Water purification techniques the military still relies on. Emergency shelter systems that outperform expensive commercial tents. Natural preservation methods that keep food safe for months without any power. Over 10 complete guides in one place with no filler. The link is in the description, but stay right here because this vault is just beginning to open. Here is what makes yacón scientifically extraordinary. The sweetness in this root does not come from regular sugar. It comes from molecules called fructooligosaccharides, or FOS. These chains of fructose pass through your small intestine completely unabsorbed and arrive intact in your large intestine, where they feed beneficial bacteria. In technical terms, yacón is a powerful natural prebiotic. A 2009 randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial published in Clinical Nutrition followed obese premenopausal women consuming yacón syrup daily over 120 days. The results were significant. Participants showed meaningful reductions in fasting insulin, a dramatic drop in body weight compared to the placebo group, and a measurable decrease in LDL cholesterol. Peer-reviewed. Controlled, published in a respected international journal, and it confirmed what Andean peoples had observed across centuries of lived experience. Researchers at Chiba University in Japan separately studied yacón's effect on gut microbiota and found significant increases in beneficial bacterial populations after regular consumption. Japanese scientists have been studying this plant since the 1980s. Countries without a $500 billion processed food industry actively lobbying against natural alternatives took this plant seriously decades ago. The United States and most of Europe did not. The global processed food and sugar industry generates over $500 billion in annual revenue. It depends on one ingredient above all others: sugar. Refined, addictive, inflammatory sugar that spikes your blood glucose, triggers insulin, and leaves you craving the next dose within hours. A root that is naturally sweet, satisfies the craving for sweetness, has almost no usable calories, and feeds your gut bacteria instead of spiking your blood sugar, represents an existential threat to that economic model. You cannot patent a root that has been growing in the Andes for 10,000 years. You cannot trademark a plant that multiplies itself freely every season. You cannot build a subscription revenue model around something a family grows once and harvests annually for decades. So instead of educating you about it, the industry educates you about stevia, monk fruit, erythritol, and allulose. Sweeteners that can be manufactured, packaged, and sold with a profit margin. Sweeteners that require purchasing. Sweeteners that keep you dependent on a supply chain controlled by someone else. If you have made it this far, you already know more about metabolic health and ancient food science than 99% of people walking into any supermarket right now. Subscribe and share this with someone who needs to remember what the food industry spent decades making us forget. Everything they buried is inside the complete vault. The link is in the description. Stay with me, because the next part is the one they truly did not want you to hear. Now let us talk about what actually happens when you grow this plant. A single yacón plant, grown in ordinary garden soil with no fertilizer and minimal watering, produces between 5 and 10 kilos of edible roots in one growing season. A 500-gram bag of yacón powder sells on Amazon today for between $15 and $30. That means 10 kilos of fresh yacón, converted to powder, would be worth $300 to $600 at commercial retail prices. One plant, ordinary soil, no inputs, one season. But here is the part that truly changes everything. Each plant produces between 10 and 20 rhizomes at harvest. Those rhizomes are the seeds for next year. You plant one rhizome in spring. In autumn, you harvest 10 kilos of food plus 15 rhizomes. Next spring, you plant those 15. In autumn, you harvest 150 kilos plus 225 new rhizomes. Within 3 seasons, a single rhizome given by a neighbor has become a supply that feeds entire families. This is exactly the kind of abundance no food corporation can control, monetize, or extract rent from. Here is exactly what to do starting today. First, source your rhizomes. Search online for yacón planting material. Small Andean seed suppliers, permaculture networks, and specialty nurseries carry them. Expect to pay between $5 and $15 for a starter pack. This is a one-time purchase you will never repeat. Second, plant in spring once frost risk has passed. Dig a hole 20 centimeters deep, place the rhizome with the visible bud facing upward, and cover with soil. Leave at least 1 meter between plants, ideally 1.5 meters, because this plant grows to between 1.8 and 2 meters tall. Third, water sparingly. Once a week in summer heat is sufficient. Rainfall handles the rest in spring and autumn. Do not overwater. Fourth, apply no chemical fertilizer. If your soil is poor, add modest mature compost before planting. Avoid excess nitrogen, which drives leaf production at the expense of roots. Fifth, wait. The plant takes care of itself. In autumn, when leaves yellow and stems dry, the plant sends its final energy reserves into the roots. Wait until the above-ground portion has fully withered before you harvest. Sixth, use a digging fork to loosen the soil around the base. Lift carefully. Two distinct things emerge: the rhizomes clinging to the old stem base, and below them the storage roots, large and sweet potato-shaped, hanging in clusters. Rhizomes go into storage for next spring. Roots go into your kitchen. Seventh, leave harvested roots in an airy space for 1 to 2 days before eating. This resting period intensifies the sweetness. Eighth, store them unwashed with soil still lightly attached. Washed roots stored damp will rot within weeks. Unwashed roots in a cool, dark place last several months. Wash only what you are about to eat. Ninth, eat them raw for maximum benefit. Peel, cut into sticks, and place briefly in water with drops of lemon to prevent oxidation. The flesh darkens quickly like an apple. Raw yacón retains full FOS content and delivers the complete prebiotic effect. Cooking reduces this benefit. If you want flavor, cook it any way you like. If you want health impact, keep it raw. I need to be honest here. Yacón is not a cure for anything. If you eat large quantities immediately, the FOS will produce gas and bloating because your gut bacteria are unaccustomed to such a concentrated prebiotic load. Start with 50 grams. Increase gradually over days as your digestive system adapts. Think about the full weight of what this represents. Andean peoples ate this root for thousands of years before any pharmaceutical company existed to tell them what was good for their metabolism. Japanese researchers identified its properties decades ago and published their findings in respected journals. Clinical trials confirmed significant effects on insulin resistance and body composition. And yet, the average person in the modern world has never heard of yacón, has never seen it in a grocery store, has never been told by a doctor that a root grown in ordinary soil can deliver genuine metabolic benefits for free. You pay $30 a month for gut health supplements in branded capsules. You pay $12 for stevia drops in a small glass bottle. You pay $8 for monk fruit sweetener in a paper bag. And meanwhile, a root that feeds your gut bacteria, satisfies your craving for sweetness, produces up to 10 kilos per plant per season, multiplies itself freely every year, and has been validated by peer-reviewed science sites unknown in a corner of human knowledge that the food industry spent a century making you forget. This knowledge did not disappear because it stopped working. It disappeared because it worked too well for the wrong kind of economy. An economy built on people growing their own food and needing nothing from a store does not generate $500 billion in annual revenue. Yacón is still there. Still growing in Andean soil the way it always grew. Still sweet, still productive, still multiplying freely every season. The rhizomes that start it all cost less than a single bottle of gut supplement. And unlike that bottle, they never run out. If this vault opened something for you today, subscribe and share it forward. Every person who plants a single rhizome is one less customer the industry gets to keep. The next vault opens soon. What is inside it is even heavier than what we just opened together.